Welcome back. We are talking about how the trade war is impacting recycling. Joining us for more are Jody Dumas, the Executive Director of Facilities for the Sarasota School District, and Michael Snipes, the Economics Instructor at USF Sarasota Manatee. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And Jody, let me start with you. At what point did the school district have to start making changes in terms of how it recycles? Well,
unfortunately, we got alerted to the changes that were going to be brought to us this year right before the school year started. So we were kind of getting ready to start school, getting schools ready, custodians cleaning up, making sure we're ready for students. And at that particular time, our hauler had called us and said, hey, we're going to be making some changes. And we sat down with them to kind of discuss what those changes would be. And so unfortunately, it was right before the start of the school year. We knew we needed to operationally make some changes to our recycling program.
Did they tell you why?
Yeah, I mean, they mentioned that they were having trouble marketing the product. And so, you know, we contract with a hauler who brings it to a processor. That processor has to go to a buyer. Processors no longer have buyers, you know, waiting for product. And so it's no longer profitable for them to sell some of the products. And so as a result, you know, haulers cannot get rid of the product like they once could. They're passing that back to us. And so with some restrictions on what can go into the material.
Michael, we're talking about whether or not this is connected to President Trump's trade war with China and that it's a retaliation. But I talked to some of the companies involved and said, you know, a large part of this really kind of the wheels were set in motion before the trade wars and the tariffs took place, that China kind of made a decision it doesn't want to take the world's garbage anymore.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the closer to the truth as to kind of why China decided to stop taking, you know, other countries' garbage and recycling just in total. I'm sure that probably the fact that they can kind of treat this as a form of retaliation for the United States might just kind of be icing on the cake. But ultimately, big picture, again, like you said, this is something that had been in the works for a while and doesn't necessarily have a whole lot to do with tariffs directly.
But how does this work? China was taking recycled materials from the United States and other countries and doing what with it?
That's a good question. And like we saw in the segment before this, I will freely admit that I don't necessarily know what happens to our trash once we throw it away. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what happens with our trash and recycling when it gets thrown away. I think you would probably be able to speak a lot more on that, but I think it's something that's interesting that you wouldn't normally think of garbage or recycling as an exported good.
Yeah, you know, we were surprised actually to learn that a lot of our recycled materials, when we put in the recycling bin and the hauler takes it, is actually not getting recycled. Many times it's going directly to a landfill because it can't be marketed, it's contaminated. So it's frustrating for us, and I know it's frustrating for residents to know that, hey, I think I'm recycling, and in many cases you may not be. It may be going to the landfill.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on recycling in the schools and elsewhere will continue right after a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about how the trade war is impacting recycling, and joining us for more are Jody Dumas, the Executive Director of Facilities for the Sarasota School District, and Michael Snipes, Economics Instructor for USF Sarasota and Manatee. So Jody, let's start with you. What have your haulers told you about how the business model has changed over the last couple of years?
Sure. So our haulers collect, obviously from us, that goes to a processing plant. That processing plant then separates, because we have a commingled stream that gets separated, and it gets then sold to buyers. And what our haulers are telling us is that a few years ago, that mix of products coming in that stream, that waste stream, 80% of that product coming in could be marketed and sold for a product. 20% had to be was either sent to a landfill or an incinerator and cost the company's money. At this point, that is kind of flip-flopped, and so basically 20% is now what they can sell and make a profit on, and 80% is what they got to pay for and get rid of. So it's no longer a profitable type of a business to be in the recycling end of trying to get buyers to get rid of your product.
And they are being quite strict with you in terms of if they come across things that are in the recycle bin that may be like a half, you know, empty Gatorade bottle.
Sure.
They're going to reject it.
Sure, absolutely. When our hauler gets to that plant, they want to make sure they've got a product that they'll buy, correct, and can be marketed. Any type of contamination is now very much scrutinized. So where in the past, if we had a Gatorade bottle in our recycling stream that had a little bit of Gatorade in it, no big deal, would flow through the process, no problem. Now at this point, our hauler pulls up to our garbage cans outside, or excuse me, our recycling cans outside schools. If they see that bottle with Gatorade in our container, then the whole load gets rejected and they don't take it all, and all goes to the landfill.
Now, is this costing the Sarasota School District money right now?
It is, absolutely. So we have a contract in place for everything that we do. Recycling and garbage hauling is the same thing, and we have a multi-year contract. So we have always paid less for recycling to get it hauled away because it could be marketed marketed than we did for garbage. Garbage was always much more expensive. At this point, because a lot of our loads are getting rejected, we're having to send them to the landfill. So just the cost of us doing business, recycled materials are now costing us more to get rid of. So unfortunately, it's not only going to the landfill, it's actually costing the school district more money to make that happen.
Michael, you could see if you look at all municipalities, all cities and towns, not only here in Florida, but across the country, I would imagine this is going to have a substantial economic impact.
Sure. I mean, it's going to force municipalities to rethink and restructure how they deal with this trash, because if this is something that is now going to be costing counties more, they're going to have to figure out a way to finance that. And this is going to be something that's going to force a lot of counties or cities to really rethink how they deal with this. And so it's something that in some way you could kind of think is a good thing, because it's a problem that really we've just been exporting to another country, and we really haven't been dealing with how much waste we generate. Now, in a sense that it's come home to roost, maybe it might be a good thing, because it might force us to rethink things.
Give us a sense of what you know in terms of why China has made this decision.
I think by and large, China is trying to assert itself as the world's new superpower. That's their objective, that they want to be the big global player. They want to be the big guy in the room. And I think that a lot of it probably boils down to perception. If you want to be kind of the big global leader, it's probably a bad look to also be, the country that every other country sends their garbage to. And so I think that when we're looking at the motivations for China, I think that that's probably playing a much bigger role, is the optics of being kind of the waste bin of the world. I think that's playing a much bigger part than any kind of retaliation story.
But it leaves a big question mark in terms of what we're going to do with our recyclables. And I would imagine, Joe, that we don't really have an answer to that right now.
We don't, unfortunately. So we've always been very, very proud of our recycling program. And we listen, I'm a green guy. I want to be an environmental steward, and I know the culture of the school district is we want to make sure everything coming out of a school is, if we can recycle it, we want to make sure we're doing that. So it's been very frustrating. So we don't have a good answer at this point. And operationally, one of our biggest challenges, if you went back a year ago, in every classroom across the district, there was a small bin that students, as they were in classroom, could put bottles in, cans in. The custodians at night would take that from each classroom out to our big recycling bin outside and get picked up a couple times a week. One of the things that's been eliminated this year is plastic bags. We cannot put plastic bags in the waste stream anymore. Unfortunately, operationally, that's a quick, easy way to get recyclables out of the classroom. Custodian comes through, they pull the garbage, pull the recycling in 2 bags, goes in 2 separate bins, they wheel it down the hallway, goes in 2 separate containers outside. If you take our ability, it seems like a simple thing to eliminate plastic bags, but if you take our ability to put things in plastic bags, all of a sudden, now we're trying to collect loose cans and bottles and paper and all that stuff. Makes it very difficult and time-consuming to get it out of every classroom and into the bins outside. And then once it's outside, if we got loose paper in the bins, as the trucks come in once a week, they pick it up, goes all over the place. So operationally, just elimination of plastic bags from the waste stream, from the recycling stream, has caused us a problem. And those are the types of things, the small changes, that have caused us to have trouble getting the recyclables out of the school.
Now, you said that this was dropped on you just right before school started this year. Have you started the process of trying to figure out what you're going to do down the road?
We have, and luckily in Sarasota County we've got wonderful principals, we've got wonderful administrative teams at every school, and so very quickly we sent an email out to all the administrators, all the principals at school, and said, kind of here's the new parameters. One of the things we have at every school is a great custodial team, but our custodial teams are not overstaffed. They're pushing 28,000 square foot of cleaning a night, and so we can't have them do 2 rounds through their classrooms. We just don't have the time to do that. So we think that we've got great administrative teams, we've got great students and staff at these schools. The solution for us at this point is it's going to be a team effort at each site. We're going to need students and staff to help us police not only any contamination going into the bins, and then also help us get it out of classrooms and kind of to maybe a common collection site. Then custodians can have time to get it out of that collection site and then hopefully out to the bin at night.
And again, Michael, you could see if we were talking about just one school system here, when you think about all the school systems and all the municipalities, I would imagine that a lot of local governments, states also, are going to be in the situation that they're going to have to figure out the cost structure of not only of getting rid of their garbage and their recyclables, but also how to pay for it.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough field to plow. You might have. Cuts are going to have to be made somewhere. You might have to redistribute revenues from one source to another source, right? You might have to raise millage rates for the county. Now that the counties are being forced to deal with this issue, something's got to give, and it might be, raising tax rates in order to pay for this. It might make making cuts in someplace else.
I mean, last question. Do you think that if all of a sudden the president reached some kind of trade deal with the Chinese to get rid of the tariffs, it's going to make any bit of difference on this subject that we're talking about?
I doubt it. Again, I think it goes back to that idea that really, from China's perspective, it's just kind of an issue of optics. They don't necessarily want to be seen as having that role in the world anymore, because they're trying to assert themselves as kind of the big global force now. So I don't know if striking a trade deal with China would necessarily do much to change the dynamics that we have with China on this issue.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us tonight. We want to thank our guests, Jody Dumas, the Executive Director of Facilities for the Sarasota School District, and Michael Snipes, Economics Instructor at USF Sarasota Manatee.